The following is a special presentation of MTN, the Montana Television Network. Wildfire, Mother Nature's fury.
We're experiencing some extreme conditions.
Creating a storm of flames.
It was pretty significant, pretty fascinating.
With Montana caught in the midst.
The fire is actually this whole back area on the other side of the tree line, which you can't see. It's freaky.
This summer, blazes across Big Sky Country sent residents fleeing.
Am I going to see my house again?
I really got no place else to go. This is our home.
Strained the state's resources.
So we have shortages on crews, engines, aircraft.
And claimed the lives of two firefighting heroes.
This fire season has been really rough for everyone.
Now we're left to put out the final embers of a season some described as apocalyptic.
If they can't get some helicopters out here, they're not going to be able to get it under control.
And regroup.
I'm always impressed by Montana.
As neighbors and Montanans.
Neighbor helps neighbor. It's always been that way.
Tonight, the Montana Television Network looks back at these fires from one corner of the state to the next, from east to west, at all points in between, and rally support for those affected as we all move forward with Montana wildfire relief.
Good evening and thank you for joining us for this MTN special presentation. I'm Jill Valley.
And I'm Dennis Bragg. We're coming to you tonight to ask for your help and to say thank you to those who have already given to the MTN Montana Wildfire Relief Fund.
The MTN Montana Wildfire Relief Fund is an effort to help those impacted most by the 2017 wildfire season, from the volunteer fire departments who race toward the flames to the community organizations who help families rebuild.
The fund is a partnership between Montana Television Network and the Montana Community Foundation. Jacob Fuhr introduces us to the foundation and several of the generous donors who have already shown their support.
The Montana Community Foundation has been fundraising for nearly 30 years.
The volume has far exceeded what I anticipated.
Mary Rutherford, President and Chief Executive, says the overwhelming support for the MTN Montana Wildfire Relief Fund has been incredible.
It's been shocking and surprising. You know, we've received donations from individuals and businesses all over the state of Montana, every corner covered.
Hundreds of people have contributed to the fund, and a thick stack of thank you notes sits ready to be mailed to donors. Among the recipients, everyday citizens and some big names, including a $50,000 match from MTN's parent company Cordillera Communications and another $50,000 match from the Mountain Sky Guest Ranch Fund and Arthur M. Blank Foundation.
The fact that people are moved enough to make a contribution to help their fellow Montanans makes a difference.
Jacob Fuhr, MTN News.
The 2017 wildfire season has been one of the most devastating on record, but that wasn't what was predicted.
KPAX Chief Meteorologist ERIN YOST looks back to explain what happened.
It's very obvious that weather plays a critical role in determining what we might see for our fire season. And honestly, it looked like it wasn't going to be that bad. As we ended this winter, headed into spring, we saw plenty of mountain snow, valley rain, even some valley snow if you recall, and much cooler temperatures. But in order to see what went wrong, you kind of have to start with what we did see, what we typically see, and what we should typically see. So we take you back to winter. The typical jet stream position during the winter months is right over the northern Rockies. Now, a jet stream is a fast-moving river of air that helps steer those systems in. Since it's right over us, this is why we see storms more frequently during the winter months. During the spring months and then into summer, it starts to rise a little bit further to the north. This is normal. This is the reason we usually see great summers in Montana. Dry conditions, a lot of sunshine. This is why we have a fire season. We see a dominating ridge of high pressure across the desert southwest. What Mother Nature did, though, this summer was a little extreme. We had a blocking ridge of high pressure, a dominant feature that shifted that jet stream so far north, it barely had a chance to give us any systems. Now, we did get that typical monsoonal moisture from the desert southwest. Unfortunately, it didn't have a lot of moisture content with it, and we saw lightning as the byproduct, a lot of dry thunderstorm activity, unfortunately. With ridges of high pressure, that sinking air that keeps things very dry. It's very normal to see our humidities in the teens and 20% range during the summer months, but we rely on that overnight recovery to get those humidities back up. That really helps with firefighting efforts. We had such poor recovery this summer that it didn't really help us out. It actually hurt us quite a bit. We couldn't get a handle on a lot of those fires as easily as we should.
We now return to Montana wildfire relief.
It is a summer most of us will not soon forget. Dozens of wildfires across western Montana burning for months that at times felt like they were never going to end.
The fires claimed the lives of 2 firefighters. The smoke put a chokehold on communities across western Montana. It hurt the small town economies that thrive on summer business, and it destroyed one of Glacier Park's iconic chalets.
This fire season scared us, it choked us, it inconvenienced us, and it frustrated us. We lost more than 1 million acres and quite a bit of our summer to fire. But let us not forget what was really lost. 2 brave men who paid the ultimate price to keep us safe. One, so young, working on just the 2nd wildfire of his career. The other, an elite, experienced hotshot with a family legacy of firefighting. But both would die in Montana, killed by falling trees while fighting fire. 19-year-old Trenton Johnson recently graduated from Hellgate High School in Missoula. He was a member of the state champion lacrosse team. He enrolled at Montana State University, working towards a degree in engineering. You had to be on your toes to keep up with this kid.
He had an awesome sense of humor. Witty, like he was 3 steps ahead of the conversation, and he would come up with just snappy, witty statements.
Trenton followed in his big sister's footsteps to become a summer wildland firefighter, and he was excited when he got that first call to fight a fire in Utah.
He likes to work hard, he likes to be outdoors, so it was a really good fit for him, and he loved it. He was on the Bryan Head fire for 2 weeks in Utah, and he called me every single day and let me know how he was doing, like what he was doing. He absolutely loved working hard.
Then he was assigned to a fire burning near SEELEY Lake, a small lightning-started fire that would eventually become part of the Rice Ridge Fire. But on July 19th, suddenly, a tree fell and hit him. He died at the hospital.
Some of the wording I heard was fast as a lightning bolt, and they just heard a crack, and that was it. 3 of them were able to get out of the way, and Trenton did not.
2 weeks later, it happened again. 29-year-old Brent Witham of California died August 2nd in the early days of the Lolo Peak fire. A tree fell and hit him while working on a fire line in the McLean Creek area. Brent is a member of the Vista Grande Hotshots stationed in San Bernardino, California. He left Montana a hero. He returned home as one to hundreds of fellow firefighters who paid their respects.
It's very emotional to see a fallen fire brother come out of the plane, and I feel pain as if it was my own brother.
Montana Governor Steve Bullock ordered flags in Montana flown half-staff in honor of Trenton and Brent and all other wildland firefighters lost in the line of duty. Montana's congressional leaders praised their bravery, saying Trenton and Brent's sacrifice will not be forgotten. Neither will this fire season. It was a tough one.
Why did this happen again? Especially so local and so close to all of us. It just, it's been a rough summer for firefighters all around.
We just ask that you keep the family and in your prayers, and the fellow workers, and all the firefighters that are out there right now on the line.
Trenton would have just turned 20 years old. His sister says the firefighting community has been there for her family during this tragedy.
Although the community was hit harder than most, struggling through weeks of record-breaking smoke and half the town being evacuated, Seeley Lake residents are pulling together and looking forward to a future without fire. A summer of smoke and fire smothered the lucrative tourism season in Seeley Lake, but the fires weren't the only problem.
The news media did not exactly understand that Seeley Lake closure was the lake closure, and so people thought the whole town was closed.
Letting others know the town hadn't burned down from the 160,000-acre Rice Ridge fire wasn't the only challenge. With more than half the town under evacuation orders, it was tough even staffing a business.
There was a little bit of a confusion with people trying to go to work and not having enough people, and how did you get people to come to work, and communication, and the whole thing was a little bit on the challenging side. When nearly, we figured that somewhere around between 80 and 85% of town were either evacuated or on evacuation notice.
Now that the clouds and rain have replaced the fire smoke, this resilient community is getting back to the business at hand, taking care of each other and planning for future promotion of Seeley Lake. In fact, work is underway for a weekend fundraiser, helping the family of a 3-year-old girl coping with an inoperable brainstem tumor in Seattle's Children's Hospital.
What I call a PTA-style carnival that was scheduled for Labor Day Sunday, and obviously we all went to evacuation mode. You cannot hold a fundraiser when there's nobody left in town. So we postponed it. We did not cancel it. We postponed it, and we are going to hold it this Sunday instead.
And that's so typical of Seeley, able to focus not on the hardships, but on the blessings of living in this legendary corner of Montana, where the fun goes on from season to season, decade to decade. A place where boating may be winding down, but skiing and free ice skating are just around the corner. The trick now is just reminding the rest of Montana.
That is true. I think that the Chamber of Commerce is going to hunker down and see what they can do to make it a very successful winter.
I'm Nicole Miller in Glacier National Park.
This is actually where you see really the bear grass in the front of the chalet.
They say every picture is worth 1,000 words.
We try to go every year to Sperry Chalet. It's difficult to get a night, and 5 weeks ago we had 2 nights scheduled.
2 nights that landscape photographer Brett BOUDA had no way of knowing would be his last ones.
I've been there probably 5 to 7 times.
Since 2004, BOUDA has been capturing the park, but he says this year the rich, blooming bear grass captured him.
This year was a very unique. The richness of the bear grass was really unimaginable.
BOUDA spent hours shooting the rustic lodge from every angle enshrouded in bear grass, capturing this photo, not knowing just weeks later the historical landmark and architectural treasure would burn in the Sprague fire.
We had a strong westerly wind that gave the fire enough oxygen and pushed it in an uncontrollable manner. There was no way of stopping that fire. It run up through that drainage, the Sperry drainage, and of course the ember showers and everything that came from that compromised the chalet.
An independent investigation into the disaster was launched by Interior Secretary Zinke, who also announced rebuilding the Sperry Chalet is one of his top priorities. For BOUDA, the moment he captured this photo will be how he forever remembers the last time he saw the Sperry Chalet.
I spent 2 hours actually walking around the chalet from different spots and taking different shots of the chalet just in case ever we need them. I mean, it's just how odd it is. So it was very fortunate, and I would almost call it divine. It was meant to be.
Reporting from Glacier National Park, Nicole Miller, MTN News.
We all appreciate the sacrifice and the effort that they've made to keep us safe and try to keep the fires under control. And it's been brutal all summer, and hopefully the rain and the weather has helped a little bit, and they can get home.
Our look at the wildfire impacts on the state of Montana continues.
MTN's Dennis CARLSON joins us now from Helena.
When fire breaks out in Montana, it's usually family, neighbors, or co-workers who are the first to respond. According to the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, more than 90% of fire departments in Montana are volunteer-run. A group of firefighters shared with KTVH's Mackenzie Frost their story of protecting lives and property during one of the most dangerous fire days this past summer. And Keeley Van Middendorp looks at the critical need in Montana for more volunteer firefighters.
It was 7 o'clock in the evening.
Nothing about this fire makes sense.
Saturday, September 2nd.
Jacksonville Fire, Canyon Creek Fire, Dearborn, East Valley, Fire Coordinator, West Valley, Lewis and Clark. Wolf Creek 877 is requesting first alarm wildfire for Alice Creek. Have them staged as they did before on Highway 200 at the DOT yard. First alarm, Alice Creek Fire from Wolf Creek.
Volunteers from fire departments all across central Montana raced to respond to the Alice Creek fire near Rounders Pass.
Fighting fire at night's dangerous.
Days after that first alarm call, Wally Jester, chief of Lewis and Clark Volunteer Fire, paints a vivid picture of that night.
And the fire was all over those mountains. I mean, it was rocking.
He and his crew of volunteers watched as the flames crept closer.
The fire's all along the fence, and you can see the ring of fire goes out around clear on the far side as far as it goes into the smoke and disappears.
These firefighters didn't know what they were getting involved in.
No precipitation this weekend. Really, Saturday will be dry and a little smoky, breezy, red flag warning conditions.
That weekend, the fire grew nearly 10,000 acres.
I've been doing this for 22 years, and it still scares you. If you're not scared, you shouldn't be out here.
With mountains surrounding the fire, ranches and homes dotting the perimeter, Dave Sammons, chief of East Valley Volunteer Fire, recalls the task at hand.
Our objective was to secure this line and then on the other side of the ridge, secure a line so it didn't get into another house over there.
Then the night changed.
We got a call from command to bring Strike Team 2 back over to the maintenance shed down here, the section house. It was being threatened.
The Department of Transportation shed housed a potential threat. 2 1,000-gallon propane tanks. 12 hours after that first call to respond,
all of a sudden it kind of started to light up on the horizon over there, and I thought, well, it's sunrise, and I watched it a little farther, and it just started, the glow come. You knew that's not the sunrise, it's coming.
When these firefighters got here and they saw the fire burning up over this ridge, they realized this was the last opportunity they had to stop the fire from taking these buildings and then hopping Highway 200.
Keeping the Alice Creek fire on the north side of the highway was crucial.
If it gets over there, we can't get to it. It'll be a helicopter show only. It's a dangerous situation. And
whipping winds plagued the firefighters all night, but when that died down, these volunteers seized their small window of opportunity.
We punched into it, anchored into the black, and just went to work.
And I'll bet you that attack didn't take 20, 25 minutes, and all 4 trucks were back down here. We watered them down. We got ready for our next assignment.
A swift change in the wind.
It was immediate. It happened so fast.
Changed the course of the fire.
And if we wouldn't have stopped it here, we would be chasing it that way. It was awesome timing. Everything worked out in our favor that night. So.
And everyone was exhausted.
36 hours up at one time before I finally went home.
I don't think a lot of people understand it's all volunteer.
Standing in the scar, they relive a critical night.
It just gives you that little empty feeling in your stomach that, you know, we got good equipment, good people, but there's still that risk that goes with it.
Despite staying awake for a day and putting themselves in danger, these volunteers would do it all again.
When you make a difference in somebody's life, you can go to bed at night and go, that's pretty cool what we did today. I got a good crew. We made a difference.
I'm Keeley Van Middendorp in Great Falls. The Montana State Fire Chiefs Association says more than 90% of the state's fire departments depend on volunteers, who are usually the first line of defense in any fire. Even before this explosive fire season, officials say they were facing recruitment issues.
We'll take whatever you'll give us. even if I can only get 4 hours a month from you, 2 hours a month from you, I'll take whatever you'll give me. And if I have enough of that, I'll have a fire department.
The Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation said last February that one reason rural departments are in a crisis is because employers are less tolerant to volunteers responding to calls during the daytime hours.
We've had volunteers tell us that I can't respond during the day. My boss won't let me. If I came back from from a fire, I would not have a job.
But fire officials say that's when most emergencies occur.
You know, usually late afternoon, especially during the summertime when the wildland season comes around.
Along with having enough volunteers to respond to emergencies in their jurisdiction, fire departments also respond to mutual aid calls in other counties. They say the timing of a fire can make or break a station's mutual aid response.
If it happens in the middle of the week, everybody's working, and we don't have very many volunteers, we can't make much of a response out of the county. If it happens on a weekend, we happen to have a lot of volunteers available, then we can make a commitment to a neighboring fire department and help them out.
Several volunteer departments in Cascade County, including Manchester and Sand Coulee, responded to mutual aid calls for the Alice Creek and East Fork fires. They say volunteer efforts were key in protecting structures at risk.
There were no other paid resources on that, in that section of the fire when that thing came out. Had it not been for volunteers, volunteer fire departments, the outcome would have been substantially different.
In Great Falls, KEELEY Van Middendorp, MTN News.
In central Montana, the July fire was the first sign of things to come.
Oftentimes in these remote fires, what you think of as a firefighter isn't always the case.
KRTV's Shannon Newth and Tim McGonigal join us now from Great Falls.
Volunteer fire crews rushed to fight the East Fork fire south of Havre when it broke out on August 27th. Thousands of acres and several cabins were burned as the fire spread.
I was at a friend's cabin in the Bears Paw Mountains that day. I remember walking around feeling how incredibly dry that grass was, and just a scuff of my foot felt like it could ignite a flame. As we headed out of the mountains, we saw volunteer trucks heading in.
And those volunteer crews were not alone on the East Fork fire.
Hundreds came out, neighbor helping neighbor, doing what Montanans do.
As rain falls in the Bears Paw Mountains,
it's a huge relief.
3 men survey the damage done by the East Fork fire.
Yeah, we were roaming back up in here.
COLTER BICKFORD, KODY Peterson, and Joel OSTROM represent 3 of the hundreds of humble civilian firefighters, those who sacrifice time, energy, and resources simply because that's what Montanans do.
Heard there was a fire and came to it, and it's just what you do, I guess, when you live in these small communities. You go help everybody out.
They gave up sleep, and a lot of it, to work around the clock, and even those dark, middle-of-the-night hours when orange flames were all that lit up the horizon.
8 days for 24 hours a day.
8 straight days. Worked all night, slept an hour, went back to work all day.
One night I even cuddled up underneath the fire truck just to get a couple of minutes of shut-eye.
I was wore out, but the adrenaline kept you going. I mean, you wanted to be out there helping as much as you could.
The East Fork fire ignited deep in the Bears Paw Mountains on the afternoon of Sunday, August 27th, quickly spreading and eventually charring nearly 22,000 acres.
There was a lot of miles of fence that was totally destroyed in the fire, so maintaining cattle where they belong is about impossible right now.
A lot of people lost haystacks and a lot of hay meadows or grazing land.
Civilian firefighters made their own firefighting apparatuses, utilizing whatever was available in suppression efforts.
Picked up a chemical tote from a family friend, rinsed it out, loaded it up in the back of the pickup, and filled it with water, got a 2-inch pump and a 2-inch firefighting hose and nozzle.
Fighting more than just the overwhelming flames, but also the intricacies that go along with a blaze burning in grass and timber.
Sometimes you're going back to areas that you just put out because it'd flare up right away.
A bond brought together those who helped in a way unique to this firefighting effort.
You might not have known the person standing next to you fighting fire, but by the end of the week you did.
Even if you didn't get along, you were best friends out there fighting fire.
Mutual support simply for the love of community.
The community support was phenomenal. We couldn't have done it without all of the support that we got.
South of Havre, Shannon Newth, MTN News.
We've heard many stories this year about fighting fires, but the fight can begin long before a fire starts. Proper mitigation on your property is your best line of defense.
We live in the state of Montana. It's not a question of if we're going to get a fire. It's a question of when.
A solid wall of trees is not a healthy plant community.
Matt Daw is in the middle of a 4 to 8 year fuel mitigation project on his 160-acre ranch north of York.
You can't see more than 25 yards in here, and this was the mess that was left over from when the beetle kill came through here over like the last 7 years. And if a fire were to come through here, it would be it'd be gone. You couldn't, like
Look
I
at
said,
all those little whips you've taken out.
Right, you couldn't see any of it.
Working in consultation with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, Daw is removing dead and dying timber from his property and eliminating ladder fuels that can turn a grass fire into a crown fire.
When we take these ladder fuels, when we trim down from as high up as we can reach down to the ground, and we get these junipers out, what's going to happen is the fire will come through here, it's going to burn the grass, it's going to burn the needle cast out of here, and it's going to continue past. It might scorch the bottom of the tree a little bit, but the odds of it going up that tree and getting into the upper fuels of that tree are very, very slim.
We've been trimming trees. We have weeded all the ground that's not grazed. Anything that, we've been working on it prior to the fire, actually.
And the Nickerson family continues to work even as the Alice Creek fire bears down on their ranch.
We've gotten rid of every kind of fuel that we possibly can. We've got chainsaws ready. We'll chop any tree we've got to get it to the ground.
That right there, if a fire comes through here, it's just going to burn everything underneath, and it's not going to get into the trees.
And as for Daw, as a volunteer firefighter, he feels good about the work he's done.
I feel very confident that if a fire were to come through here, we would minimize the damages to our property, and we wouldn't sustain any structural loss or anything of that.
Tim McGonigal, MTN News.
We now return to Montana wildfire relief.
During this year's fire season, southwest Montana fared better than most other parts of the state.
MTN's Donna Kelly joins us from Bozeman with a look, though, at the aftermath of one big fire that did hit that region.
The largest wildfire in southwest Montana this season was the Myers Fire south of Phillipsburg. It scorched more than 62,000 acres and forced evacuations. But September snow and rain knocked the fire down and has nearly put it out. MTN's John Amy walked the charred forest left behind by the fire and talked to those who fought the blaze.
You hear that?
That dull, distant crack was the sound of a fire-damaged tree toppling over. And while recent rains and snow tamped out much of the wildfire burning south of Phillipsburg, the hazards of falling trees and unstable ground continue to make this charred forest a dangerous place.
Those dangers will exist for a while, not just this fall, but the snags will always be there until they finally fall to the ground.
Hunters and outdoor enthusiasts are warned to be cautious when they return to these woods.
You can still have things come loose with additional moisture, trees falling, rocks rolling.
Since lightning first started this fire in mid-July, it was a difficult one to fight. Crews used a defensive strategy to save structures around Moose Lake that were threatened by the fast-moving flames.
We had limited resources and extreme fire behavior with extreme drought conditions.
So I'm standing here in a fire-blackened wilderness near Moose Lake, and this is a spot where firefighters literally diverted this fire around a structure. In fact, the flames came within yards of the cabin.
Set up pumps and sprinkler systems and get the elevated moisture up and around the cabins. The whole idea is for the fire to move around the structure, leaving the structure safe.
And the plan worked because no structures were lost. South of Phillipsburg, John Amy, MTN News.
To the hundreds of Montanans who have donated to the MTN Wildfire Relief Fund, we say thank you. In the nearly 2 weeks since launching this effort, we have raised over $200,000.
And we'd like to say a special thank you to some of our biggest donors, the Mountain Sky Guest Ranch Fund and the Arthur M. Blank Foundation, who are matching $50,000. The Montana Shirt Company has generously given $25,000. American Bank donated $10,000, and the Shopco Foundation has donated $5,000. And Cordillera Communications, the MTN network, matching $50,000.
And to all those who have stepped up and helped during this fire season, from the firefighters who put their lives on the line, to the volunteers in the evacuation shelters, and those who helped house livestock and pets that had to be moved.
We here at KPAX and the Montana Community Foundation thank you for your support, and thank you for watching. If you'd like to make a donation, it's as easy as going online. Go to kpax.com/wildfirefund for more information. Thank you for watching. Good night.